Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some chicken tenders, homemade ranch, some home fries, and we're going to bake up our Easter Aunt Aggies that we made. So let's get our home fries going in the oven. I've got three fairly good sized russet potatoes here. We're going to keep the skins on and we're going to cut them in half, and then we're just going to slice them nice and thin to where they're much thinner than a potato wedge, but definitely not as thin as a chip. And we're going to season these up and we'll pop them in the oven to start cooking up. Kind of had a little bit of a late start on the day. Where kids were outside playing, we joined our neighbors. Then it became everyone was playing in the mud, and then we got sprinklers out, and it just turned into chaos. So a little later start on lunch, but the kids had a lot of fun this morning. It's a lovely day here in Tennessee. The weather, it's getting up to the 80s, so very nice. And of course, Evie was like, "Oh, can we do water play? Can we do water play?" Which turned into mud play. Okay, so we got our next one. Cut them in half. We're gonna do the same thing. You don't want to cut them too thick because you want them all to kind of cook up at the same time as possible. So just nice little thin wedges. And then we're going to coat them with olive oil and a little bit of flour, seasoning salt, and a little bit of ranch seasoning to give them kind of a nice zesty flavor. There we go. Let's get this first batch in my big bowl over here. That way I have room to cut. There we go. And our last one down. Then we're going to dress these up and put them in the oven. Say, all my kids are like, my youngest one, we had to get him down for a nap and everything like that. But he was outside playing too. And our neighbor has some of those, like ride on Jeeps. And he was having a blast just riding on them, trying to like dictate where everybody goes and stuff like that. He's a little leader at 18 months. Okay, so we've got our potato slices in here. Now we are going to dress them with about 2 to 3 tablespoons of olive oil. You just want to make sure they get coated well. And then let me grab my ranch seasoning over here because we're going to use part of our ranch seasoning for our potatoes and part of it for our homemade ranch dip. So I've got a packet here. We're going to use just about half of it for our potatoes. So what I do is just kind of feel it where it is and then shake in about half. This is going to give you kind of like a zesty French fry. And then we're going to add a little bit of Lowry seasoning salt. So we're going to cook these up, season these up nicely for our fried chicken tenders and our home fries, and then we'll bake up our Aunt Aggie's. And we're going to put a little bit of flour in here. This gives it that kind of steak coating to it. You know how you go to like a steakhouse and they have those delicious steak fries? So we're going to put about, I want to say like a tablespoon or 2 of flour in there. And then we're just going to add a little shake of some panko breadcrumbs, about, I want to say like 1/4 of a cup. That way you have these nice little crunchies on there. And then we did a little Lowry salt. We're going to do a little garlic salt. And these will be delicious. And now we're just going to really coat them all with that seasoned mixture up. We have that olive oil in there, so that'll all help like the flour and everything stick to the potatoes. You want to make sure you get them all coated up nicely. There we go. So we have our delicious ranch seasoned potatoes. Get my baking sheet out here, and we're going to spread our potatoes over our baking sheet. The whole bowl there. And we're going to spread them out. Try to get them to be as least, like, you want to get them as much space as possible. Make sure you don't have any that are sticking together. That way they crisp up nicely. There we go. And we're going to go pop these in the oven. My oven is preset to 350 degrees because we're going to be baking up our Aunt Aggie's, which bake about 350. So we're going to cook these at 350 as well. It just means they take a little bit longer. I'm going to put them on my top rack here. I'm going to let those start to cook up. Okay, while we're having those cooked up, let's prep our chicken for our chicken tenders. So we need to make our egg base and our flour base. We're going to do that, then we'll cut up our chicken. So we're going to mix together. We're going to just beat up 3 eggs. And then I'm going to add a splash of half and half to it. So it's kind of a little bit more liquidy. And this will give you kind of a slightly more of a batter texture on your chicken. Let me grab my fork here. And a little cream. You only need about a tablespoon of half and half or cream or milk. You don't need much. And then we're going to just pop each yolk. And then we're going to whip this up until all of it is like mixed together. So we just have a well mixed egg wash, kind of like a little egg batter. And there we go. And you just want to make sure your yolks, or not your yolks, but your egg whites get mixed up well, because otherwise they'll just stay together and they'll have like a big kind of like snotty egg yolk part thing. And then let's get our seasoned flour. So we're going to start with about 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. We're going to season this up, and then after we dredge them, we're going to add in some panko breadcrumbs. So we're going to start off with some black pepper. We're going to use about, I want to say, a half a teaspoon of black pepper. You could do more if you like it a bit more spicy. We're going to do a teaspoon of oregano. About, I want to say, a teaspoon and a half of garlic powder. Or not garlic powder, onion powder. We're going to use about 2 teaspoons of paprika. And then we're going to do a teaspoon of garlic salt and a teaspoon of Lowry salt. So we're going to give it a good shake. And there we go. And let me grab a fork to toss that up since my egg one is covered in egg. We're going to mix this up. And this is going to be our kind of flavored dredge for our chicken. And a lot of people will just dredge their chicken in plain flour and then they season it up for the second coating. I like to make sure this is seasoned up well because this is what's going to really stick to your chicken. So you want to make sure you have it well seasoned. That way it will be delicious. And then we'll add some seasoned panko breadcrumbs for that extra little crunchiness. But this is important to make sure you get all of those like herby spices in it. Okay, we are done with this guy. Let's get our chicken prepped up. So I've got 2 big chicken breasts. We're going to first cut them in half. Make them nice and thin. This is going to help them cook up faster. So just cut it all, like if you were butterflying your things, you're just going to cut it all the way through. This helps it so you don't have to hammer out your your chicken. Otherwise, if you have still pretty thick pieces, then you'd want to, of course, hammer those out. But if you can do this, you don't have to. And then we're just going to cut them into some nice strips so that when we bread them and then fry them up, so just nice things. I will tell you, they look smaller now, but when you coat them up, they grow in size because of that breading on it. So you don't want to make them too big. Here we go. And I will always say, like when you're cutting your chicken, you typically have like a grain in your chicken that you kind of can cut with that will leave a nicer cut. Just follow those natural like kind of edges in there. Like I can see my chicken splitting apart right here. So I'm going to just follow in it for a chicken tender. That way they don't fall apart when you're cooking. But you see, just 2 chicken breasts really can give you quite a few chicken tenders. There we go. So we've got all of our chicken tenders ready for the dredging. Now, when you're doing the dredging, you're going to want to keep one hand is going to be your dirty hand and one hand's going to be your clean hand. So this is going to be my clean hand. So I'm just going to coat each one of these in the flour, the seasoned flour mixture that we use. Some paprika, onion powder, garlic salt, Lowry salt, oregano, and black pepper in to give it nice and seasoned up. There we go. Yeah, there's a fly in here. It's probably because we had our doors open all day. You know, that first bit of spring and the weather is nice that you can start airing out your house. But it always brings in all the bugs. We've been dealing with what is it, mayflies? You know, my 3-year-old, trying to teach him it's not a mosquito. These are nice. They eat mosquitoes, but he's like, it's a giant mosquito. There we go. We'll coat this up. Just a few more, and then we're going to add in some of our seasoned breadcrumbs to it. You want to use seasoned because it just gives you a nicer flavor. There we go. Okay. Now I've got my clean hand here. We're going to add in about a cup to a cup and a half of these panko breadcrumbs. And then I'm just going to use my hands. We're going to mix these up. And this is going to give you a really nice crunch when it comes to your chicken tenders. So it's going to give you that nice crust on them. Okay, we've got these mixed up. So now we're going to go into the egg wash, coat it up. That dredging of the flour is going to really help that egg wash stick to it so that this nice crumbly breading part will stick onto it. And that's going to be where all that delicious flavor is. Now, if you wanted even juicier, tender chicken tenders, you could take the time to soak your chicken breasts in buttermilk, and that will lead for a really juicy chicken. But I always sit there and I'm like, that's a lot of forethought to remember to do that. So I find this works out just as good. But that, especially if you were planning to do a big fried chicken dinner and you had the time, if you soak it in the natural acids in buttermilk just help break down the fat in the chicken, and it leads to a really tender chicken. Here we go. I'm going to coat these. And as you can see, I always keep one hand clean and one hand thing because that way I have a hand to do something if it's something arises, like an emergency arises. Here we go. And there's really no other way to do this. You could try to do it with a fork. It just doesn't work as well because I really like to push that breading into my chicken. So it's something you just got to get your hands in. You got to get dirty. And then you just give a good scrub up when we're done. There we go. Just a few more. So you coat it here. It's hard, when we got to feed a lot of mouths here. So although today it's not a huge amount of chicken, sometimes when we do it for dinner, I've got two, double this amount of chicken, depending on how many we're feeding. But this is just going to be for 6. So there's still a good amount. 6. We'll have our home fries, some fresh fruit, and we're going to bake up our Easter Aunt Aggies that we made the other day. I'm excited. The kids love those cookies, and they're in some fun Easter colors. So we'll see how they look when we cut them up. Okay. 3 more, and then we are done with the dredging. But this is key, doing the second one. So the first one was just our flour mixture. You got to do this, you do that, and this gives you that extra thing. And I've known some people who will then do it a third time. And I've tried that where I then dip everything a third time. The problem is then your breading gets to be about too thick and it falls off during the frying process. So I find just making sure you get this coated well and it can stick onto it works the best. And so you don't want to just shake it in there. I like scoop the stuff on it and I pat it in. This helps the breading stick on it, because the worst thing is if it falls off when you're frying. Okay. We've got all of ours coated, and you can see my finger is quite coated here as well. We're done with this. I'm going to go wash my hands so I have some freedom. But I will say it does coat your fingers well. Get a little soap. Okay. Let's get our oil warmed up for frying. So we're going to pour it in here. You don't need to have a whole lot of oil. Just enough to really cover the bottom of your pan. So, and I'm just using olive oil because I only ever like to buy one type of oil. So it's just enough that the bottom of your frying pan is coated, because remember we do the flip, and when you put the chicken in there, the oil will rise up higher. So you don't need to make sure your chicken is completely submerged. Okay, we need to bring this to a nice and warm temperature before we are ready to start frying, because you don't want to put it in a cold oil. You want it in nice and hot. So I'm going to grab my Aunt Aggie's out of the freezer right here. We made 2 logs, and I just cook up 1 log at a time. So it's in the freezer. It's nice and firm, but here you can see the fun little Easter colors we did it. And let me grab my baking sheet, because what we do is all you do is you cut them, you lay them out on a baking sheet, and then you bake them up for about 7 minutes. They cook up super fast, but they are the most delicious cookies ever. They're our family favorite. The recipe has been it's been in my husband's family since the 1800s. So it's a family recipe there. You know what? It's frozen, so I always like to use a nice, like a chef knife and whatnot to cut them off, because you're going to need a little heft to get through it. But once you get past the first one, I always cut off the ends so that we have a nice, even cut through. But do you see how pretty they look? You've got like the swirling in it, and then they'll bake up and they'll just be beautiful. And these are our Aunt Aggie's recipe. So it's made with just 5 ingredients. It's flour, sugar, egg yolk, butter, actually 6, baking soda, and cream of tartar. But it is a super simple recipe, and they have a mixture. I want to say they're like a butter cookie, but sweeter. So they're not as sweet as a sugar cookie. And it's nice is because when I do them, I make up a bunch of batches, and I always like do them around the holidays because I can dye the colors, the nice holiday colors. And so, for like St. Patrick's Day, we did orange, white, and green. Christmas, we do red and green. So you can really like make them really cool and festive. But you make a big batch, you put them in the freezer, and then you just cut them up, and you can cook them up throughout the week, so you can have homemade cookies whenever you want with hardly any work. So whenever I do it, I always make, a lot of times I'll do a double one. We just did a single one, so I have a whole nother log of this in my freezer. And these go by so fast. But they're just so pretty. Like, you can just see the colors here, how pretty they are. And then, but you want to keep them in the freezer. These aren't ones because you want them to be really cold when they go into the oven. That's what keeps them, because they'll cook up really fast. Look at that, just a little bit more. And you can also, so I make mine fairly small, like in the circle wise. You can make them bigger. But my kids, they like them small because then they can grab like a handful of them at a time, because they don't last long. And their favorite is to eat them about 10 minutes after they come out of the oven, because they're still soft with a little bit of firmness, but then they crisp up and they're a little bit harder for a little while, but still delicious. Okay, let's put these last ones on. And then we're going to pop these in the oven.
You have a question. Can you describe what type of cookies they are again?
Yes. So they are like the type of cookies these are like a mixture between a sugar cookie and a butter cookie. So they're not as sweet as a sugar cookie, but they have kind of that nice texture and they have a lot of like a rich butter flavor to them. So you get the best of both worlds. And we're going to pop these in the oven, just making sure they don't spread out too much, which is nice. So we're going to take our home fries. We're going to put these down on the bottom. We'll slide these in here. They've been our fun Easter colors too. And then I'm going to set my timer for 7 minutes because they bake up and they cook up really, really fast. Okay, let's check if our oil is nice and hot. We're going to do my splash test. So we're going to just drip it in. And you see, perfect. I'll turn it down just a little bit, nice and hot. I got my husband. I knew to step back. He didn't. That's just when you're nice and hot. So once you get it to here, you turn your heat down halfway. So I had it heating at an 8. I turned it down to a 4 because you want your oil hot to crisp it up. But if you leave it hot, it's going to burn your chicken. So we'll use our things. We're going to put our first layer in. There we go. But you have to use hot oil. You can't use cold oil. You have to have it heated like up. Otherwise, you're going to have soggy chicken. And nobody wants soggy fried chicken.
You have a question? Is the recipe for the cookies available?
Yes. Okay. We have videos of the Aunt Aggies up there, but we also have a recipe card posted on the link on our page. So you'll have to go back and find it through, but we do have that available on there. It was a while ago that we posted it, but yes. And trust me, I have not met a person who doesn't love these cookies. So they are delicious. Let's prep our homemade ranch dressing for our chicken and our home fries. We're going to start out with some mayo. You want to use, let me clear this up. You want to use full fat mayo because light mayo just has a funky taste to it. And make sure your mayonnaise is fresh. People love to forget about their jar of mayonnaise in their fridge. Even if it hasn't gone bad by the expiration date, if it's been open in your fridge for a couple of months, it has a funky taste. It always does. It just picks up all of the flavors in your fridge. So I always go through, we use a lot of mayo because I make it lots of little different dips from it. But make sure you have fresh mayo. If it's expired or if you opened it up a while ago and you don't remember, you're going to want to get rid of it. My parents' mayo, their house has always the grossest mayo there. I always bring a jar. We're going to put a half a cup of mayo, half a cup of half and half. I let it sit for a second and we're going to squeeze over some fresh lemon juice. So if this is a way to make it to where if you don't have buttermilk, I just do half and half with a little bit of fresh lemon juice. We're going to let it sit for a second because that will help that the cream part of the half and half curdle up, and it makes for the best ranch dressing. Let's see. Where's my tongs? Check out my chicken here. There we go. Nice golden. Perfect. We're going to flip them. And now the oil is not as hot as when we first put it in. So then they'll cook a little bit longer on the second side. Because every time you put your oil in, get something into your oil, it cools it down. So we'll cook it a little bit longer. While that is cooking, we're going to line a baking sheet with paper towels. Because when you transfer your chicken tenders out of the oil, you want to put them on some paper towels to soak it up. Because if you just leave them on a plate or whatnot, they get soggy from the grease. So this is going to help have them nice and delicious, keep them crispy and crunchy is what you want. Okay, so we've got that sitting. We're gonna do that. We're gonna pour in the rest of our ranch seasoning that we used. So that we used a half a bag to season up our our home fries for like a zesty home fries. We're gonna use the rest of that and put it in here. And then I'm gonna chop up 2 green onions and some fresh parsley to add into our ranch. Give it just a nice little flavor. And you wanna mince these up nice and small. And then we're only gonna use the greener parts of the green onions. Once we get to the whiter part, we're gonna stop because those are a bit more astringent and aren't as good for like in a dip. Those are better for a garnish. Okay. So we've got these tops of the greens, and then I'm just gonna go over them a couple of times because we want them nice and small. So you're not just getting a huge green onion chunk. There we go. I'm gonna add this in here. And we're gonna give it a little stir, and then we're gonna mince up our parsley. There we go. So we have in here, we have about a half a cup of mayo, a half a cup of half and half, juice from half of a lemon, and half a packet of ranch seasoning. And now we're gonna put our green onions in, and then we'll do some parsley. So you wanna give it a good stir. There we go. Let's check on our chicken tenders here. Yeah. We still need a little bit more. I want them to get to a nice rich golden color. Okay, let's get our Italian parsley out. We're gonna get a good grab of it. And this, I love chicken, like chicken tenders and homemade ranch dressing is like one of my favorite things. I would take ranch, well, I am a little bit of a ranch addict, but I would take ranch dressing over any other dip that for chicken tenders that you could, any other one. When they're at the restaurant and they give you that teeny tiny little cup of ranch and you're just like, come on, give me the bowl of ranch. I need to have every bite dipped in ranch. Plus I need to dip my fries in ranch as well because there's just nothing better than delicious homemade ranch. It can't be like the store-bought. It has to be homemade because you just can't replicate that flavor. So we're gonna mince these up, but let's take a pause because I hear our Aunt Aggie's beeping at us. Okay, I hear you. Perfect. Look at them. They've puffed up nicely. They are gorgeous. These are our Aunt Aggie's. I'm gonna hold them right here. I'm gonna move my French fries up, and then I'm just gonna cook them for the last bit on the air fryer setting of my oven to crisp them up real fast. There we go. But these are our beautiful Easter Aunt Aggie's. Just look how gorgeous the colors are, the swirls are. They are absolutely beautiful. It is a simple kind of a hybrid between a sugar cookie and a butter cookie. 6 ingredients, super simple. We dyed them in our pastel pinks, greens, orange, and blues, swirled them together to make a really pretty Easter cookie for the kids that they will love. Okay, before we check on finish up our ranch dressing over there, let's get our first batch of these chicken tenders out. Grabbing the ones that I know are nice and golden and crispy. These need those there. That one's nice. Okay. I'm going to let these, I want them to crisp up just a little bit more, but we're going to start adding in our last bits. And then let me grab up. My skillet is much bigger than my pan. And so it's depending on where it sits on the pan, depends whether it needs to be a little bit longer. Okay, we're going to put these there. They have like a light golden color, and I want them to have a nice deep gold color. So we're gonna see if we can slide these guys in here. And got one more. This guy's a big one. Okay. There we go. I'm going to rotate because I know that this part of my pan cooks a little hotter. We're done with this right here. So I'll move it. Just wipe off my counter here. I find it's easier to get it. And then we're going to finish up mincing up our parsley for our homemade ranch. And then I'll give it a taste, see if it needs any garlic salt. Sometimes you just got to give it a pinch more for that nice, rich flavor. Okay, let's get these guys minced up. Take any big stalks out because you don't want to have any super huge pieces in there. And you want to try to mince this up as finely as possible because you don't want to have like a big leaf in your ranch. But you do want that nice little burst of freshness that the parsley gives you. When I was living in Germany with my foreign exchange family, they used to make this homemade. It wasn't a true ranch, but it was similar, and it was so good. So they would use fresh herbs from their garden. So you had chives, parsley, basil, oregano, and then you would mix cream and sour cream together, a little bit of vinegar, and it was just, and then salt. And it was so fresh and delicious, and it was my favorite dressing that they had there, and I loved it. And I've not been able to truly recreate it, but it was so good. We're going to add in our parsley. Give this a nice mix. It gives you that just nice pop of freshness, which is great. You know, you could dip your veggies in this as well, not just your chicken tenders, but it is so fresh. The lemon juice adds a nice little brightness to it. Get these last ones right out here. Perfect, nice golden. See, we got that. I always put the hot, oily, greasy side down so that it collects. You know, it crisps up that, because if you let the oil like sit on it, it makes it soggy. So always put the greasy side down. Okay. Let's taste our ranch, see if we need to add anything else. So good. We'll do a pinch of garlic salt, not much. And then I want to add a pinch of pepper. Not as crazy. There's a restaurant here called Chewy's, and they do like a pepper ranch, but I wish they would put like half the amount of pepper in it because it gets to be a bit much. Okay. Look at this. Perfect, thick ranch is what you want. Okay, let's go check on our, well, let me see if I can flip these first, and then we can grab our potatoes. There we go. Out of the oven. There, these are almost done. Let's go check on our home fries. I'm going to grab mine and get a trivet. So I turn them up towards the end on the air fry setting, which blows hot air around. It's a nice convection, but there you go. Gives them nice and crispy. You can see the little bubbly crispiness on each one, which is perfect. Turn off my oven here. But that is, you know how we coated them in flour and olive oil, and you can see the little bubbling there. That's kind of just like it crisping up. Gorgeous. So we've got our home fries there. Let me get my spatula. And what I like to do is go right underneath my home fries and flip them over because they're going to be a bit more crispy on the bottom. And if you flip them over, they'll crisp up even more. Let's get underneath them.
You have a question. So I'm looking for the recipe for the cookies. The link through the on our page. And when did we make them?
I will say we've made them several times. I want to say when we posted that recipe card is probably going to be around St. Patrick's Day. So in March, middle of March is when I think we posted that recipe card. So you have to go back there because we posted them. You know what? Super Bowl. We posted them around the Super Bowl.
Right, but step by step in the video yesterday.
Yes,
right?
we did make yes. So yesterday, no, 2 days ago, because yesterday at lunch we made we prepped these exact cookie Aunt Aggie's. So that video will have them there, so you can watch and make them along with that video. The recipe card I know was posted sometime. I want to say either around St. Patrick's Day or the Super Bowl, because that's when we made them last time. Okay, let's plate up our lunch while these are frying up. So let's start out with our home fries. We've got our nice crispy home fries. And then we've got some lovely chicken tenders. And of course, our homemade, let's do our ranch dressing. So this is our homemade ranch dressing using mayo, half and half lemon juice, fresh parsley and green onions, with our homemade chicken tenders that we coated in a panko breadcrumbs, oregano, paprika, garlic, salt, onion powder for delicious crunch, and then of course our ranch seasoned home fries for a delicious lunch. And let's not forget our delicious homemade Aunt Aggie's cookies. These are everyone's favorite. When you take them about 5-10 minutes out of the oven, they're nice and soft and the best. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what I'm cooking for my family, and hopefully teach you guys something. Again, you can always find our videos. We upload them to the link on our page. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe.